Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our second webinar within the project Youth and Climate Litigation. My name is Laura. I'm from Germany, and I'm currently a volunteer at the Common Sense Youth Organization here in Azerbaijan, and I'm a volunteer of the European Solidarity Corps. And our project Youth and Climate Litigation, which is financed by the Visegrad Fund, it aims to promote youth participation on environmental issues and also how to take action or how to get involved, be engaged in policy and decision making. And we already had our first webinar with our speaker, Chloe, and she told us about environmental issues, environmental awareness. And today we will have our second webinar, which will be all about decision making and advocacy. And therefore we have our guest speaker, Jana Prokofieva here, and she will give us answers to the following questions. First, the importance of youth participation and decision making. Also, how to empower youth to be involved in climate litigation and decision making. And the last one will be reasons for the underrepresentation of youth in climate litigation. So let's get started. I'm going to join Jana now. Hi.
Hi.
All right, I can hear you. That's perfect.
Great.
I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, and then you can start with your presentation.
Sure, great. Thanks, Laura. So thanks a lot to Common Sense for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here today with you. So my name is Jana. I work in advocacy. So I have been living, I'm actually Russian, but I haven't been living in Europe for the past 8 years. So I have quite a lot of international experience, and I have experience in advocacy in various sectors. So I have had the opportunity to work in the private, public sector, but also in the NGO sector. So most of my experience now comes from this NGO sector. I currently work at the NGO that's called Surfrider Foundation Europe. So it's an NGO fighting for ocean protection. And I'm part of the team that works with the European institutions. So tries to promote better regulation for ocean protection at the European level. So the idea today is that I'm going to talk to you a bit about decision-making and advocacy. It's a very large topic that I love. I regret that we don't have that much time together. So I'll try to be quite brief in my theoretical part of it, let's say, and then please don't hesitate to comment and to ask questions just throughout the whole presentation so that I can see your comments right away, and we will have hopefully at least half of the webinar dedicated to questions and answers so that I can hopefully answer directly some of the practical maybe questions that you have so that it's more useful to you directly. Also, when you're writing a comment, don't hesitate to introduce yourself and to say which country you are from, because I don't have experience in all the European countries, of course, but I will try to take your national context into the account as much as I possibly can. So I will share my screen now. Just a sec. So hopefully now you see my presentation. This is really just a support, and I will share it with the organizers afterwards. So if you need it, I hope that they can maybe send it to you. And you also have my email here. So don't hesitate to, even afterwards, if there are some questions that I don't have the time to cover today, please don't hesitate to write to me directly. I would be really glad to continue our discussion afterwards. Laura, is it okay? Can you see my screen okay, my presentation? Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, okay. I can see everything. Is it okay if your picture is here in the corner?
Yeah,
probably. Okay, perfect. All right.
This way people don't forget what I look like during the presentation. to talk about the importance of youth participation and decision making. Why is it actually important to include young people in the process, apart from, I mean, obvious democratic considerations that I'm sorry, I'm a bit sick, so I'm trying to heal myself with some tea. So sorry for the voice. So yeah, I was saying that apart from obvious democratic considerations that we want to get everybody as much involved as we can in the society, so that society functions at its best. I wanted to give you two examples of why, of how youth participation can actually change things. So I will give you examples from the European level, because from European politics, because once again, this is the examples that I know best. So the first one would be about the European elections. So you may know that at the European level, we have several institutions. We have mainly three main institutions. We have the European Commission that acts like a government of the European Union. We have the Council of Ministers that is composed from the ministers of different European countries. And we have the European Parliament, which is directly elected by its citizens. And so every 5 years we have elections to the European Parliament, and these elections are always a disaster. I mean, it has been years since like a normal a normal high participation in those elections. Participation has always been on the decline, and especially youth participation has always been on the decline. And like in the last time we were preparing for elections in 2019, and everybody was kind of anticipating a disaster once again, because like we thought that numbers would just continue to get lower and lower. But then a miracle happened in some sort. In 2019, we actually had the highest participation since 1994. So that was a surprise to everybody. And we had a boost of youth participation. And so we had plus 14% of youth participation compared to to the previous years. Why is that important? Apart from the fact that it was really a good thing for the European democracy, because we finally had more than 50% of citizens who went to vote for the parliament. It was important because a lot of the youth voices were actually casted for the Green Party. And even, I'm not here to promote the Green Party at all, but we have to admit that the Green Party is the Green candidates are often better in terms of environmental agenda that they are proposing, and also, so that means that after the European elections in 2019, there were more MEPs, so members of the European Parliament, from the Green Party who were elected. So that means that they were more ambitious in promoting this agenda, but also for other people who were elected from other members of the European Parliament, even if they were not from the Green Party, they saw that there were a massive vote for the Green Party and a massive vote from the youth. So they actually decided to take the green issues much more into account. And so today we have a parliament that is very different from the previous one, that is much more ambitious on the green issues. And so it's much easier for us, let's say, lobbyists from the NGOs, promote our climate agenda and our environment protection agenda. And this all happened, namely due to the youth vote. And another thing is the EU Green Deal. So I don't know if you've heard about it. If not, you can totally ask me a question and we can discuss it in more details later. But at the beginning of 2020, the European Commission proposed the EU Green Deal. So it was a package of measures which they started publishing in 2020, but then it still continues. We still don't have everything that has been published since then, that has been proposed since then. It's a package of measures that are aimed at addressing a whole bunch of problems across all the sectors. So it really covers every sector of our life, I'd say. It goes from transport to construction to, industry, stuff like that. You have measures on climate fighting climate change, climate adaptation, biodiversity protection and restoration, all kind of stuff actually. So it's a huge package, pretty ambitious. I mean, we still see where it will lead us once it's actually voted and implemented, but it was still a huge ambition. And the reason why I tell you about that is because so Franz Timmermans, as you can see from the quote that I put in my slide, Franz Timmermans, Vice President of the European Commission, has repeatedly said that the only reason why they actually proposed the EU Green Deal was because of the Fridays for Future. So the demonstration that we saw from the young people from all over the world who was skipping school on Fridays and going just in the streets, it actually worked. I mean, maybe it gave more or less results that we were expecting, but for the adults there in the commission, let's say, so for people who have been politicians for many decades, it was really surprising to see such a huge youth mobilization, and this is what pushed them to act. And this is beautiful. This I really see this as a beautiful example of what we can achieve when we mobilize, when we get together and we do something together, we organize, we mobilize together, and this is actually one of the results that we can have. The reasons for youth underrepresentation are really very, very numerous. So from what I understand, I think that this could make a topic of somebody's research. So I'm not going to cover everything, of course, in the little time that I have. But the main, I believe that the main idea is rooted within the lack of political representation. So we have today less than 10% of the elected members in national parliament are youth representatives, like are young, let's say. So it's really very dependent on the countries. It's really not representative, let's say. And also, we haven't seen any meaningful increase of that over the years. So, for instance, when you see the representation of other categories, like representation of women in parliaments, it's still not satisfactory. It's still not at 50% most often, depending on the parliaments once again. But the representation of women in different parliaments has risen progressively over the last decades, over the last years. But this has not been the case for the youth representation, which stayed low. We also have a lack of electoral participation. So I gave you the example of the European elections in 2019. So it was always, it was basically always very low, the youth participation before 2019, where it rose again due to climate issues, namely. And yeah, if we see the 2014, if we look at the 2014 European elections, we only had 28% of people under 25 who went to vote. So of course, if you don't vote, then you are not represented. But maybe you don't vote because you don't see any candidate who would represent you correctly. So that's a bunch of reasons that I think are quite tangled together. And then I think that, and that's what I saw in different researches, that sometimes the youth is not taken seriously enough, in the sense that even when the youth young representatives try to become more involved in like traditional politics, let's say, maybe sometimes they don't have enough resources, they don't have enough contacts to make a career within a political party. All the members of the party always are often reticent to give up their seat for somebody who's really young. This kind of stuff still happens, and I think it's really is really not helping the representation of youth. And how can we empower youth? I think so. There is, this is really my personal opinion. I think that if you ask different organizations who are working on youth empowerment and on youth participation, I think that everybody will have their own answers and their all on policies to promote. But I'd say that we need both systemic changes. So to try to get some proactive measures to boost the participation from young candidates, from youth engagement, and so forth, and so on. But also we need to include youth representatives in the dialogues that really matter, because what I think we see quite a lot now is that we quite often have different youth councils or youth dialogues that are being formed within different institutions, be it at the European or at the international level, for instance. But I have the impression that these instances, these dialogues, are being formed separately from the places where the decisions are actually made. So you have an advisory youth council, but then who will not particularly then participate in the decisions being made, like during the planner or something like that. So it means that you consult the youth, but then if you're not really listening to what the youth is saying, that it doesn't make much sense. And I wrote here about self-empowerment because I think that Fridays for Future that we've just discussed actually provide a great example of how we can also act just by ourselves without waiting for the system to change. We can actually start and change the system by ourselves and grab a seat at the table, just ask for a seat at the table and say that people, that the current political system cannot keep taking decisions that will concern our future without involving the youth. And in the I don't think we have so much time left, but I really wanted to give you some examples of how you would how you can push your advocacy in a concrete way, because I know that sometimes if you have an issue that you really care about, a cause that you care about, that you would like to promote, sometimes it can be really really complicated to see how it works at on the political level and what do you start with, and but it's all like you learn from experience, but if you can avoid some basic mistakes, I think it can allow you to go faster. So first, the very first thing is to define a precise objective. So very often when we dream about something or when we think about a cause that is really dear to our hearts, we keep a cause that is really large. And this cannot be an objective of your campaign or your advocacy plan. Because I don't know if you take, I will take ocean protection because that's the field I work in. You cannot say I just want to protect the ocean, or I want to restore oceans biodiversity. It's a very good wish, but it's much too large. And I think that if you formulate it this way, you will just risk doing too many things at a time and not really progressing in any of them. So a precise objective would be, for instance, I would like to improve water quality in the sea that I live close by to, for instance, or I would like to make sure that fisheries is decreased in the sea where I live, like in the close to where I live, something like that. Ideally something that you can really measure, and ideally something that is related to at least a geographical zone. Then you need to define the right level of action, because you have tons of different political institutions nowadays at different levels. So you have international ones, European, national, but also then you have local ones, regional, etc. And it will all depend on the country, and from one country to another it will be different as well, because if you have a country that is federation, it will not function the same way than a country which is not a federation. So you first need to do some research and to understand who is actually responsible for taking a decision that would help advance your cause. So, for instance, I don't know, once again, if we take the example of fisheries, if you want to stop harmful fisheries, you cannot just go and see your local mayor and ask him to stop harmful fisheries, because even if the boats of the fishermen go from the harbor in your city, most often it's not the mayor that is responsible for distributing the quotas, for instance, and for defining the fisheries policy. This would be national or European level, depending on how the countries are organized. So you will need to aim higher. But if you want to introduce a better system of waste management, this can be something that maybe in some countries can be done on the local level. So you need to do your research. Then next step is to find supporters and NGO partners. Finding supporters is super important, even for yourself, because being just all alone in a fight is really very tiring, and it's much easier to do that in a group of people who care about this cause as much as you do, and with whom you can share tasks, and who can also contribute their different talents and capacities. So you can find supporters by various means through different, I don't know, through social media, and NGO partners is also can also be very useful, because very often you would have NGOs who maybe work not exactly on the same topic as you do, but maybe on some issues you agree, and you want to work in the same direction. And maybe on these issues you can form a coalition, and it would always be more efficient than if you do this alone. Just because very often, most often actually, so you are doing lobby, let's say, for general interest, and on the other side you have the same lobby coming from the private companies, and the private companies have immensely more resources than you do. They have more people, they have better technical resources, they have better, very often they have better access to expertise and everything, just because they have more means to pay for it. So when you have a coalition of NGOs, it allows you to pull together resources and to kind of, to really pull weight to face the industry members. Benchmark the political scene. So you have to identify who can be your ally, because the way it functions, it's not just you against all the European institutions, for instance, or all the national institutions, whatever. The institutions are not one person, they're composed of different people who have different departments, and who have different positions and different opinions. So, for instance, I don't know, if we take once again the example of fisheries, you will have some members of the parliament who will support your position because they are green and because they understand that, or because they care about ocean protection, for instance. There will be others who will not support you. Well, then they're not your allies. But you also can have some ministries who maybe can support you or not. So, for instance, if you take different ministries, you can have Ministry of Fisheries that will have no interest in decreasing the fisheries, but you could have Ministry of the Environment who would be pro cutting some fish, So this kind of stuff. You can also have some other structures that can be involved, like, I don't know, if you have a federation of small fishermen, or like a trade union or something like that, depending on the country. Most probably they would be in favor of limiting fishing quotas as well, because very often those quotas, they go to the big fish boats, and then don't leave enough fish for the small fishermen. So they could maybe support your claims as well, and this can be also helpful for your coalition. Then you need to identify means at your disposal and formulate your arguments. So the means at your disposal would depend very much from the level at which you're trying to act, if it's like at local, national, or European level, and also at the stage and like at the context at which you're trying to act. So, for instance, if there is an issue that's not at all at the agenda of political institutions, and you're trying to attract the attention of the institutions so that they can deal with it, then you will probably have to use more of the means of citizen mobilization, let's say. So I don't know, it can be organize a demonstration, take people into streets, or make people sign a petition, something like that, to show the institutions that citizens care about this issue and that the institutions should too. This can also be a meeting with some individual representatives of the ministries or of the commission to explain to them your position, or meeting with some members of the parliament, to explain your position, to just be there, and try to generate some buzz around the issue and to show citizen support for it. Whereas if it's an issue that the institution's already working on, then you will have a lot of different tools, other more institutional tools, let's say, with through which you will be able to lead your actions. So you will have, I don't know, public consultations of stakeholders. You will be able to send proposals of amendments to the members of the parliament. This kind of stuff, So you will need to, when you make your research, you will need to analyze the context of the situation and to list things that you can do. And then you need to formulate your arguments. So unfortunately, we are not yet there at the point where everybody would just agree that we need to protect the planet and we need to protect the ocean just for the ocean's sake. For instance, I would really love if we got there. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work for a lot of people. So in my work, for instance, I have to prepare different kind of arguments for different kind of people. I will give you an example. I worked on a campaign to prohibit offshore drilling in Europe. I'm still working on it, but it's a really complicated campaign that's really tough to advance. And of course, my main argument is that we need to stop climate change and we need to protect the ocean, and offshore drilling is extremely harmful to the ocean and the ocean's life. So of course we need to stop it. But this is this is an argument that only works on people who are already sensible to the ocean protection and to the climate change fight. So I have some of the MEPs who support me just because they are convinced that this is a good cause, or because they used to be before being elected, because they were a sailor, or because they had the degree in oceanography and stuff like that. But there are other people who are not really convinced with that. So I have some other arguments that I can use. For instance, I tell some other people who are maybe more concerned with the economic side of things, I tell them that offshore drilling is a sector that has been in decline for many years now, and that it actually threatens, by its own existence, it threatens some other sectors that have much more economic weight in the EU, like fisheries or tourism, for instance, and they employ much more people. So this is the argument that it's not my favorite argument. I really don't like to go to the economy to argue my point, but it does speak to some people, so you have to identify kind of the interests of people that you are talking to. And then that's the last point that I'm going to make, is that you have to take care of yourself. And I know it's not really the point of this presentation, but I just really want to stress that the path of climate activists is really hard. And I know it's pretty depressing what we do sometimes, because you may think that things do not advance or do not advance fast enough. And I know that we've seen quite a lot of studies about eco-anxiety among young people. you cannot let it get to you, because imagine if it gets to you now, it means you will just get burned out now, and you will never be able to advance your cause afterwards, after that. So take it slowly. Try to surround yourself with good people, to have like a support group. Try to celebrate victories, even very small ones, when you have them. Each person that you've convinced about the importance of your cause is a victory. Each person that has signed your petition is a victory. Everything can be a victory if you let it. And you really just have to take care of yourself. It's like they tell us on the planes, in case of a problem, just first put an oxygen mask on yourself and then on your child. If you are not um, capable of caring about yourself, you will not be able to care about the planet, unfortunately. And just another piece of advice on that is also, you can also always join somebody who is already doing that, working on the cause that interests you. So just maybe this is a very general remark, but very often in the NGO sector, I see, unfortunately, that it's a game of egos, and very often there are some people who just, I don't know, start an NGO because they want to start an NGO and because they want to be president of an NGO. If we are here to advance the general interest, I would recommend really benchmarking who's doing what in this sector before starting, and to join forces, because it can be much more efficient. And maybe there is an NGO who's already working on the topic that you are interested in, and maybe you can just lend them a hand, and you will both go together much further and much quicker. Or maybe there is an NGO who's working on that, but on another continent. Maybe you can just open another branch here in Europe, and they will help you with the resources and the structure of the NGO. I don't. If you think that starting your own NGO, starting your own movement is a way to go, please absolutely do that. It would be absolutely amazing, but it also takes a lot of time and effort. So sometimes the most efficient way is just joining somebody who already exists. So that's just an option that I also wanted to mention. And last but not least, I wanted to share with you some of the resources that can kind of maybe push you for further your further reflection. So you have some books that I would to recommend. Actually, the first book, I even have it here. It's really a bit. It was for me like really a guidebook at the very beginning when I started this job. It really talks about citizen lobbying, the importance of citizen lobbying, and I think that half of the book, or 1/3 of the book, is devoted to a toolbox where really like he explains the process of the decision making and different means at your disposal to influence it. So if you, I really recommend it if you can get a hold of it in your local library or in your bookstore. And all we can save is just a very inspirational book. And then I put in some films and TV shows as well. So there is a bunch of films about lobbying, which I all love. You have Parliament. It's a TV show about the European Parliament, where you actually see somebody who was lobbying against shark finning. So it's not a documentary. It's just a comedy TV, short TV show, but pretty fun and pretty truthful to how the European Parliament really functions, I think. You have a dark water films that was screened in 2019, I think. It's an American film, and it's about the prohibition of PFOA. It's a chemical that used to be added in a lot of products like frying pans and stuff like that. So this is a bit about the legal fight that led to the prohibition. And then you have a bunch of other movies that are really classical, like Erin Brockovich and Thank You for Smoking and Miss Sloan and stuff like that. A lot of those are American ones, so they do not really reflect how we do lobby in Europe, let's say. In Europe, things are much more regulated than in the United States, I have the impression. But they can still be fun, and they're one of my sources of inspiration. And I don't know if you can see the last line. Oh yeah, cool. My picture has disappeared, so now you can see. Um, I wanted to quote some of the NGOs that are here to help you in the actions that you want to implement. So the Good Lobby is actually an NGO that was founded by Alberto Alemano, who is the author of the very first book on the list. So it's an NGO that puts you in contact with companies who are able to help you pro bono. So pro bono means that company doesn't ask for money for what it does, but it provides you with expertise or any advice that you may need. So the Good Lobby is just one of the only example that I know that functions in the only NGO like I know that functions in Europe. But then you have a ton of those of structures like that in different countries. I tried googling before this webinar, and if you just put pro bono and the name of the country, you will probably find some. And if you don't, please write me a line and we can look for it together. But this can consider taking this help when it's available, because you have companies. Very often, those are like lawyer firms or consultancy agencies who have time and resources, and so if they can help you with some expertise, or if they can sit down with you and help you write a lobbying plan or advocacy plan or something like that, this can always be helpful, you know. And once again, it's a way of um, let's say it's to get the even level playing field, the equal level playing field with the companies who have these resources internally. Let's say, TechSoup is an example of NGO that provides you with some technical tools. So I know that technical tools are rarely the priority for a lot of young NGOs and young movements, because we think that, okay, well, even if I don't have access, I don't know, to Google Drive or stuff, or to Slack or to stuff like that, it's no worries. No worries. I can use just what I have. It is true, but when you have tools that are not efficient, you actually waste a lot of time just on the tools and not of the essence of what you're doing. So it's always better if you can have some tools free of charge or really cheaply. Why not benefit from it? And then I put other NGOs here just to remind you once again of what I have said, that you always have NGOs who are here to help, either to form a coalition with you, or sometimes there are NGOs who are available to help, more particularly youth movements, who are ready to help you with research, or lend you or share maybe the studies that they've done previously, or put you in contact with researchers that they've worked with previously. Actually, everybody is really in this, so it's a complicated sector, let's say, the NGOs. It's not, we shouldn't idealize it, but there are still quite a lot of actors who are here to advance the general, advance our common cause, and to work together for general interests. So really don't hesitate to reach out. And I think that's it for me. So Laura, you can I will stop sharing my screen. Yeah, you can see me now. So I don't know if there are any questions.
I haven't seen questions as well. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It was super helpful, and I think we now have a really nice guideline to get involved. I can understand that it can be a really intimidating topic. It can be scary. Yeah, that's what I think. And I was wondering if you have like concrete examples for organizations like Fridays for Future. For example, I know Plan for the Planet, who also takes action. Do you know something else?
You mean the concrete organizations that are changing things?
Yeah, if there are people who are still hesitating to how to start, maybe you have some examples.
Oh yeah, you have. You really actually have a bunch of them. I'd say that you have two different types of organizations out there. You would have traditional environmental organizations that have been there for 10, 20, 30 years. And I think that these organizations haven't actually given enough place to youth either before, just because those are professional organizations and now they know how to, so they have their expertise, they know how to do lobby, so they're pretty efficient in what they do. But I think that those organizations would benefit from youth membership and from youth being inside those organizations and helping steering these organizations, more towards the topics that interest youth. And those can be any environmental organizations that you can think of. I don't know, Greenpeace, WWF. That's all the same issues. Those are all very good organizations, but you don't really have youth is not really represented inside. And then you have quite a lot of youth organizations that have been formed nowadays. And I think that quite a lot of them are not. So very, very often the topic of climate is still not presented in all the organizations. So you can always join an organization and try to explain to them why they should also work on climate change and environmental protection issues. Or they're not professional enough. So I think that, for instance, Fridays for Future is a great example of a movement that was really spontaneous, that was here to, as I said, to grab a seat at the table, to just make themselves heard. But then they do not have, as far as I know, a formal lobby strategy. So they don't have people inside who are responsible for lobby, who would have to, follow this process through. So it still worked what they did, because they pushed for it very hard, and so now we have the EU Green Deal, for instance, at the European Union. But then it's still us, the traditional environmental organizations, that are now following this through, because it's not enough to just push for something to push for something really hard. It's the beginning of the change that we saw 2 years ago. So that's great, and that's really amazing that we got there. But now somebody has to be there and to do like everyday boring lobby, and it's really can sometimes be a bit boring. I participate to 100,000 public consultations where I say exactly the same thing. I go to the same meetings. I repeat the same arguments all over again. But it just being there and playing by the rules of this game that was created by these institutions. And that I know that the rules are really boring. The game is not really exciting either sometimes, and it's also super complicated. And especially at the European level, I know it's a mess, and it does not really encourage citizen participation. But if you actually get to it, and if you actually understand how it works, it can give you a huge leverage.
All right. Thank you very much again. I don't think we have any questions left. So yeah, I would end it here. Thank you very much again for your for your presentation and for your effort. And I would end the broadcast now and wish you a very nice evening, and of course to our viewers as well. So yeah, have a nice evening.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot, Laura. And I will send you the presentation. So if anybody reaches out to you, you can share it with them, of course. And my email is there as well. So please don't hesitate to follow up with me if you have any questions even afterward. Thank you. Right. Thanks so much.
Bye.